Vlad Listьev has been murdered. Everyone knows the sad news now, and therefore in the course of today's report, our condolences, versions of possible motives and circumstances of this terrible crime. Yesterday evening, in the driveway of his home at number 30 Novokuznetskaya Street, Vladislav Listьev was killed. At 21:25, a signal came through the regional service on duty that at 30 Novokuznetskaya Street there is a man with a gunshot wound outside his apartment. An immediate response group was dispatched, and the occurrence was confirmed. When was it established that this was Listьev? Immediately. Did the Ministry of Internal Affairs on duty say that? No, when my crew went out there, they knew his appearance and they established it. It's unlikely the reason was theft, because on the victim there was money found, $1,500 and 1 million rubles. The cause of death was a deafening gunshot in the head, which destroyed the brain. Death was instantaneous, it says in the expert's conclusion. On the site of the murder, a brigade of criminologists from the Moscow Internal Affairs of Moscow and the prosecutor were at work. Investigators are refraining from commentary. However, it's known that all possible versions are being pursued: revenge, politics, professional activity. Many feel that the reason is the privatization of Ostankino. Incidentally, it's not known how investigators regard this option. The investigation is being carried out by specialized units of the Moscow Criminal Search Department, specializing in high-profile crimes against deputies, famous bankers, and journalists. The investigation has been joined by regional departments dealing with organized crimes and the Federal Service of Counterintelligence. Evidently, one of the first operational measures in search for the murderers was encountered by our film crew returning from the site to Ostankino. According to several posts of militia, because of the murder, a wanted notice was issued for a car of a dark color with 2 well-dressed men. Even when murders become commonplace, it's impossible to become accustomed to death. Each new crime is disturbing. The murder of Vladislav Listьev literally shocked everyone, and today all the talk is about the tragedy. Here on Novokuznetsky, since the early morning, people filed through in order to lay flowers. Flowers near the house, flowers on the car. And everyone asks the same questions to each other and to the film crew. Who, why, and for what? Who needed this murder? Will there be answers? I feel that everything began with the murder of Holodov. That's how I see it personally. Then there was Tarkov. These are people who are dying, who really told us the truth. The murders of talented, marvelous people, this is all so terrible and horrible. The fate of Russia, when the best people are perishing, our contemporaries, Wysotsky, Dahl, Talkov, Tsoy, all of these people dying in the full bloom of their lives. It's difficult for me to speak. I think that those who gathered here, these are people who not just came to look, a crowd of people, but people who loved and respected him. When you turn on his program, Rush Hour, you see truly marvelous and unique eyes. He never insulted anyone from the screen of the television. He was a marvelous man, so proper. His broadcasts always brought some sort of a live stream into our lives. He was an unusually progressive person, and it's very difficult for us, and we will miss him insanely. No one now will attempt to give an absolute answer to the question, why was Vladislav Listьev killed? It seemed that we knew him so well. He seemed as a good friend to those who only saw him from television screens every week in the Point of View, Field of Miracles, The Shadow, and then each day in Rush Hour. In his plans was the program Galactica, a new children's game, but children won't see this program with Vlad, just as other programs, which he would have probably thought up, and because he was only 38. Death has become commonplace. They kill entrepreneurs, bankers, stage singers, and priests. And now 9 grams of lethal lead stopped the heartbeat of Vlad Listьev. A journalist has been killed without whom, as once the writer Andrei Platonov said, the people will be incomplete. Never, neither under the Tsars nor under the General Secretariats, were journalists killed so brutally, so mercilessly, and in such a sequence. I don't know why or who needs it. More truthfully, I know for certain that they do kill because of words. Previously, for this freedom of speech, they persecuted, they exiled, made one rot in gulags. But now, someone in their cold, calculating sense decided, why so in such a complicated way? It's more simple to kill them. And so the bullets of hired killers fly toward journalists' hearts, and only the Lord God knows in what point they will meet the heart with the bullet. This thought seems to have been heard and was formulated into words. The death of Listyev is the result of criminal settling of accounts in and around Ostankino. It's simple, and even very simple. It seems as if Ostankino is part of some sort of a vacuum, as if there is no pressure from organized crime on us, as if there are nor were major murders for hire which were unsolved, as if the sticky, ingratiating, pitiful mug of the homegrown Russian mafia isn't breathing in our faces. I don't know what political sympathies or antipathies troubled the true professional Listyev, but if our president is against falsehood, against blood and waste, against turbulence and destruction, then in our television station there was no more pro-presidential person than Listyev. Therefore, let's not issue imperative instructions. Let's not immediately resolve the problem of crime. Let's not issue journalists licenses for safety. We need only one thing, so that the yet unkilled journalists should be listened to and heard by the authorities, because the heart of a true journalist beats in the vast chest of the people. To not understand this means to continue to kill journalists. It means to regress. It means to return to the past, to totalitarianism, to dictatorship, to the armored train, which still stands at the contingent track. Vlad Listyev grew up and became a man before our very eyes. But the boy in appearance and yet the venerable, eminent anchorman were wonderfully compatible. He excelled in proving his provocative, intelligent uniqueness, which among the people is so often called simply talent. His name, which we used to call not just a person known to millions, but an entire direction in contemporary television publicistics. Today, the Russian president, especially having changed his business schedule because of the tragic events, came to the mournful assembly with the staff of our television company. Around Ostankino, again it's crowded. Today, all who gathered here have been united by the grief and shock produced by the vicious murder of one of the most talented Russian television journalists, Vladislav Listyev, who was and will remain in our memories a symbol of freedom and independence, which, in very difficult circumstances, the press of the renewing Russia is acquiring. To honor the memory of our colleague, the President of the Russian Federation, Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin, arrived in Ostankino. In the auditorium, leading journalists of Russia, many friends of Vladislav. Respected colleagues, respected friends, we have gathered today on a mournful, tragic occasion when one of the most marvelous people in the television world was murdered and has died. I emphasize, in the television world. And we must bitterly regret that journalists continue to be victims, victims, and victims. And who is next? I ask you to honor the memory of Vladislav Nikolaevich Listyev by standing up. Please sit down. Thank you. Boris Nikolaevich. A tragedy has occurred. A tragedy for the staff of Ostankino, for all journalists of Russia, and for all of Russia. The tragedy of the criminal murder the cowardly, evil murder of one of the most talented workers in the sphere of television. He's left the world, but at least he shone and excelled in Ostankino. This is not the first case when journalists die. It means that there are some reasons which can't be determined or caught by the state, which can't be managed by the government and the president, which the prosecutor's office can't manage, nor the administrative organs. Evidently, there's something within the situation of the staff of Ostankino itself. We don't have in Russia anywhere such an outbreak of debauchery, such irresponsibility on the part of administrative bodies, nor do we have such negligence and inefficiency as we have in Moscow. The merging of the mafia with various commercial entities, the merging of organized crime with administrative organs, organs of internal affairs, the leadership, including those of the city, and the heads of these organs shut their eyes to certain things. I think that, considering the fact that Moscow is an entity, it's separate, its administrative organs work through the Ministry of Internal Affairs, this will be still, of course, too small a price for the death of Vlad Listьев. If we dismiss from their posts and fire the prosecutor of Moscow and the head of the main department of internal affairs of Moscow, this would be just, because the issue here is a life of a person. But there will be dismissals from work. Of course, this is one more lesson for us, a lesson that we, fearing ourselves, in fearing that we will turn Russia into a police state, we fear tightening up the battle with these criminal groups. In Uzbekistan, they immediately executed 6 criminal gangs. The organs of internal affairs shot them all, firing squad style. And the situation immediately began to improve. I'm not calling for extreme behavior. No. We don't need